have a look at this. It's the LG CineBeam S, a mini ultra short throw 4K 100-inch laser projector. The S has a tough act to follow. This is its predecessor, the Q, the CineBeam Q, and it's really cute, this thing. You've got the handle, which you can carry it around, and also prop it up, but they're both 4K laser projectors. The difference is this is, well, the new one, but it's also ultra short throw. This isn't. Okay, so it's not as charming, but this new design brings some big advantages. I mean, for starters, being a 4K laser ultra short throw, so UST projector, the CineBeam S is tiny. It is a little bit bigger and heavier than last year's Q, but not by much, and it's still very sleek and portable. And while you can find other mini UST projectors, most aren't proper 4K, and most don't have a proper RGB light source. This, along with the industrial design and the WebOS software and all the nice things you get with an LG projector, that's what you're paying for here. I do have good news though, because the launch price is actually less than I expected. Last year's CineBeam Q was $1299, 1,300 quid here in the UK. So I was expecting the S to be about the same, but now it's up for pre-order. It's actually launching at £200 less, $1099. Although I don't have exact US pricing just yet. But given how this is now UST, as a couple of nice extras, and pretty much identical performance, spoiler alert, this is a strong start. Just bear in mind though that the Q has dropped to about half the price. But there are some meaningful upgrades with this new S, and maybe the biggest one is UST. The 0.25 to 1 throw ratio is genuinely ultra short throw, and it means they can work from as little as 8 centimeters from the wall, which gets you a 40-inch projection, up to 40 centimeters for a maximum 100 inches, although I found I needed to be a little bit further than that to get the full size. For comparison, the older Q, and like most small projectors, needs to be about 8.5 feet away to hit that 100 inches. So UST is much better if you're tight on space. You obviously don't have to worry about walking in front of the lens or getting lasers in your eyes. Literally, just plonk it down. It doesn't even have to be totally lined up with the wall, because the autofocus and the keystone correction, which removes the distortion, does all the rest. You can move it further away for over 100 inches, but it's not really recommended as it's less sharp and the autofocus and the alignment don't work quite as well. So far so good then, but there are some downsides. For example, it can't hit the full 120 inches like last year's Q, plus being ultra short throw means it's less forgiving if your wall isn't completely flat or has bumps or dents. And while the auto screen adjustment does a decent job getting things aligned, I often found I had to tweak it a little bit to get the best result. And of course, there is some loss in brightness and contrast if you don't have a proper ALR projector screen, or at least even a grey wall. So like last year's Q, the S has a 4K RGB laser light source that can hit a max of 500 ANSI lumens, which is about as good as you're going to get from a mini projector. But as usual, if you want something that can replace your TV in a brighter living room, you're going to want something with at least 2,000 to 3,000 ANSI lumens. This isn't going to cut it as a proper TV replacement. So like I mentioned, the S uses an RGB laser system with individual red, green, and blue lasers, meaning better colors and extra brightness and less blur versus cheaper color wheel based options. Specs-wise, the image is pretty much identical to last year's Q. Although new for the S, we get stereo speakers with Dolby Atmos built in versus the Q's pretty rubbish mono speaker. So plugged in, fired up, you will be greeted with LG's WebOS, a slightly tweaked version of LG's usual TV UI. Which of course means you get all the usual streaming apps and plenty of settings to tweak, and the bundled remote control makes navigating all of this a breeze. I just wish it was a little bit more responsive. Menus can take a few seconds to appear, and I find myself hitting a button twice thinking it's not registered. It's all very straightforward to use though, and there's plenty of picture settings to choose from, with my go-tos really being ISF Expert Bright, or just the brightest mode. One thing I will say though is the auto alignment does struggle a lot more than I expected, more so than last year's CineBeam Q. It does an okay job, but I often have to rotate the S a little bit or jump into the manual settings to align things a little bit better. Although screen scaling and also screen shifting are new to the S, and it lets you fine-tune the size and the position of the image respectively. Plus, we get this new wall color adjustment. And actually, this is a really big deal as it lets you project on different colored walls. Just pick the color and then it'll calibrate the color and contrast of the projection. Again though, darker grays and gray blues usually work best than just a bright white wall. I'm projecting onto gray projector paint, which is much better for maintaining brightness, and I've been using it both on a stand and on the floor. Obviously the latter isn't the tidiest setup, but as the image is so much higher than the CineBeam S itself, it actually keeps the middle of the image at eye level if you're sat down, which you probably are. I actually quite enjoy just dropping it down on a side table and getting a, I don't know, 40 to 60 inch image while I'm having dinner or even while I'm cooking in the kitchen. And I've also been using it as a second screen for my MacBook via AirPlay 2, which is built in. It's also been a lot of fun doing some split screen with my Switch 2. I just plug it in via the HDMI. But remember, like last year's CineBeam Q, the S does not have a built-in battery. You are still going to have to be within reach of a power outlet. And actually, I recently tested the XGME Mogo 4 portable projectors, which do have a built-in battery, although they are full HD rather than 4K. But the laser model does get brighter, and they're a good deal cheaper, so the XGME is also worth considering. But what about the image quality? This is obviously quite important. Well, straight away, you will appreciate this is a quality laser system. Starting in a darker room, it looks great. Colors are vivid, and the extra high color gamut coverage means it can display a huge number of shades. Contrast and blacks are nicely defined, and there's plenty of detail if you're streaming or playing in 4K. Open the blinds though, and as usual, contrast colors really do suffer. Quick tip though, if you are using this in a brighter room, then just reduce the image size. Over a smaller area, it looks brighter and also sharper. And then finally, as for gaming, well, we have LG's Game Optimizer mode that turns off a lot of that background post-processing and also turns on ALLM or Auto Low Latency mode, plus we get this handy gaming overlay. I mean, it's not going to beat a regular high-end TV for latency, but it's still pretty good, and if you play less twitchy games, it's actually a great experience. Plus, there's nothing quite like a 100-inch Mario Kart. Is it better than last year's CineBeam Q? Well, take a look for yourself. They're actually very similar and both look just as sharp as each other, and also they both have the same 500 anti-lumens of brightness. However, despite that, I did find the new S to be a little bit brighter, while the older Q was a touch more saturated and contrasty. Although maybe a little bit too much some of the time, meaning the S actually brings out more detail in brighter and darker areas. It seems to have a slightly better dynamic range. As for sound quality though, the S's stereo speakers are much punchier, whereas the Q, while clear enough, lacks basically everything else. It doesn't sound great. Q gives a much wider range of colors. LG reckon this covers 100 versus a traditional lamp-based projector, the single laser light. So let's wrap this up. I really like the new S. However, the Q is still a very good option, and it's significantly cheaper, especially now it's been out for, well, the best part of a year. And the image quality is pretty similar. I know it's not ultra short throw, and that's kind of what you're paying for with this, but for everyday use, I would be perfectly happy with the Q. But if you want ultra short throw, if you want the new guy, then yeah, the S is a really cool option. And there's not much else out there that offers a proper RGB laser 4K projector with this image quality in a design like this. So definitely worth considering, and if you do fancy checking it out, I'll leave a link in the description below. Question is though, what do you think? Would you be tempted by this or this? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chap.